Hi, my name is Doug Howard. I'm the president of Growth Team Strategies. I'm here with Kathi Fleck, one of our senior consultants, today talking about Selling the Dream, which is our podcast for people that are thinking at some point they want to sell or transition the business that they own. Kathi, how are you doing today?
I'm great here in Texas. We've got lots of rain, no dry weather.
No dry. Well, the good thing about rain in Texas is that it's not extreme heat in Texas, right?
True. That's
Yeah,
true. It was still May, so
yeah. So I was jealous. I was actually watching music awards the other night that were from Texas, and I thought, man, everybody in Texas just having fun. I don't understand that, but no one in Maryland's having fun, but that's okay.
that's a different story.
It's a different story. At least we can at least fly to Texas when we need to, so that's a good thing. So today we want to continue our conversation. We were talking on a previous episode about how to find a successor and things we need to be thinking about with successors. And of course, you're lucky enough to even have one successor amongst either your family or your team or what have you. But I want to talk about a different challenge today, and that is when we have multiple people that could potentially be a successor. Maybe we have a leadership team of 3 or 4 people, or a certain number of people that have been with us for a long period of time, or a couple of family members in the business that might be interested. Because really, a business is still going to need a leader and a leadership structure. Not everybody that has an interest in being a successor should be a successor. And it's interesting how many times in the course of going through these processes, we actually deal with this as a challenge. So what do you think? Have you ever heard of that situation or had people experience that situation where it's like, I got 2 or 3 people that, any one of them could be interested, or I've talked to all of them about being interested, or I hear those phrases quite a bit.
Yeah, I think from my experience, just hearing that they have a leadership team and it really couldn't be given to one person or sold to one person and do a joint ownership is what I have heard. So I don't know how they would handle one or another. It seems to me that somebody would take a natural leadership role and the others would follow. But if there's some kind of competition, or if several think that they should have the business, I think the owner is going to really have to figure out some kind of criteria. Financial is also going to be a big part of it, but some kind of criteria as to really who, if there's one leader, who's going to take that role.
Yeah, when I acquired the accounting firm, I actually did it with 2 other people that we were all working in the company together. I was the president of the company, someone was a regional manager, another person was our technology manager, but we had very different levels in the organization. Then, and at the time, I thought I was going to need more partners, frankly, just financially, and to be able to deal with. That was a really dumb way of thinking, because it changed the dynamic tremendously. But now all of a sudden we had gone from sort of an absentee owner and me running the company to 3 people that were discussing everything, voting on everything, and 2 that had worked for me that had very different perspectives on certain things, and maybe even a little bit of an element of revenge that they needed to
Mhm.
get for the period of time that I was in charge.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was, like, all of a sudden, our ability to act, to set a clear path, do those kinds of things was pretty challenging.
I imagine it would be.
Yeah. And I think, partnerships are a tough thing anyhow.
Hmm.
If you have a business partnership, there's got to be an awfully good reason. When people say like, "Oh, I may bring in a partner," if it's not because they're going to bring something financially or a capability or something
Hmm.
like that, just having a partner so you're not alone, to me, is really, really not a great strategy.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because there's always going to be that clash or difference of opinion, and who really has the majority ownership or leadership. And I think there are other ways that they can get their help from a board of advisors, a consulting company, picking up different professions such as a financial business coach, accountant. Any of those can really be a help to the business owner. I do think it is difficult too to have a partnership.
Well, and I think, when you have the business owner that's selling, kind of looking at a leadership team or even looking at a couple of family members and piecing that together, it's kind of like an arranged partnership, right? It's like something that somebody else is doing. It's not me saying, "Hey, I want to be partners with Kathi and we
Hmm.
want to run this business." it's somebody else saying, hey, Doug and Kathi should work together.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not a great dynamic, or maybe it's not what we even want.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So at the end of the day, what happens is, there's a lot of challenges. And then I know we were having a conversation offline talking about what if you've got a couple people on a leadership team, and maybe the one that's the strongest financially isn't the one that really should be leading the organization, or doesn't have the most talent for leading the
Yeah.
organization. Right. And then I think with family members, there's already relationships that go on between
Mm-hmm.
brothers and sisters. And, but then you throw an in-law in there, right? It's like, well, I've got 3 family members in the business. I've got my son, my daughter, and a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's a whole new dynamic.
I
So,
think some of the ones that we've known who have been partners, like husband and wife, I think one person needs to be the leader and the other person has a distinct role, but it's also um, a partner.
yeah, yeah.
Somebody has got to be holding the reins by themselves.
No, I agree. I think that's a good insight. So, in any business, things like role clarity, job descriptions, ways to evaluate employees give a lot of clarity to the business owner. I think those tools can be helpful also in trying to build your succession plan and assess who should be in leadership and where those opportunities
Mm-hmm.
may exist. Right. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the things, for example, in your organization or as you're working with people, you're seeing that are just good practices that'll kind of give that structure that might just help piece some of this together?
Well, they can do evaluations on the personality or what their strengths are and figure out where the leadership skills are, or they can see that as far as the natural role that somebody would take and help to develop that person. But probably also the open discussion with, if there's several people who are being considered for the role, open discussion on what it's going to take and that they're going to have to be working together, even if somebody's taking a different role.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you're talking about like the personality assessments, are you talking about like disc assessment, or what other things are out
Yeah, I think there's DISC. I think there's other ones out there too, but I think the one that you and I are most familiar with is DISC. Um, and not that one of the 4 elements is stronger than another, because you see leaders with all different types of personality, but I think it's one thing that can be helpful. Um, Certainly in the disc, the things that are also our strengths are also the things that are most challenging and difficult for us. So they kind of work both directions.
there? Yeah. I've also heard people speak very highly of Clifton Strengths. There's another one that I've heard people mention that
Not
really
familiar.
helps identify strengths of the individual, some
Hmm.
leadership qualities. But I think whatever path people go down, and I know you're a big advocate of getting sort of outside help, outside resource, an objective measure. I think really being able to get some sort of an assessment of, you know, where somebody is, how, the thing I like about DISC is it's a lot about how people of different personality types can communicate with each other. You really want a team uh, uh, effort. Patrick Lencioni wrote a book about the 6 working geniuses that
Hmm.
talked about the 2 geniuses, the 2 competencies, and the 2 frustrations that everybody has, and they have different ones, and how to piece together a team that says, like, listen, if attention to detail frustrates me, but that's what you're all about, like that may be very effective. If we're all big thinkers and dreamers, we're probably missing somebody that can implement, or vice versa, right? But I just think any of those objective measures can really help say, well, if you are thinking about putting a group together, you got to give a little thought to what that group's going to look like and who's going to lead it,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
And I think we see some of that with family members too. Did you do employee evaluations in your business,
I
Kathi?
did. Yeah, I did.
So what was kind of the thought behind that frequency? How'd you approach that? Because I think that's a big missing piece in a lot of companies where we sort of say, like, we have an idea of what we want them to do, but we don't always give them a very clear understanding of how they're progressing. And a lot of times I think they just totally get equated to, am I getting a raise or am I not getting a
Hmm.
raise? They're
Hmm.
not used as a tool to say, hey, Kathi, we want you to be in a different place 3 years from now. So we've got to continually be elevating your skill set and your talents and and those things. You know what I mean?
I did mine a little differently. I had spent many years in the corporate world where they had a more regimented type of employee evaluation. So, but what I did is I asked the staff individually to list things that they were comfortable with. What were the three things that they were having most challenges with within the company? What kind of support could I give them? What were their frustrations? What were their goals? So a list of questions, and then they answered them on their own. And then we would meet. This was on a quarterly basis. We
Nice.
would meet, and it always turned around without my knowing it was going to go this way, but it always turned around where they started looking at identifying things that they needed to work on. And I knew what they were, but we would then work on them together. So it was more of like, well, how can we get this done? Because not that they weren't interested, but there were things probably within the company or other employees or processes that would get in their way. So it was really more of a way of building their strengths.
Yeah. I also have seen some people do a really good job of laying out some of the experience they're going to want to have somebody to have had, and making sure that they understand, listen, in 3 to 5 years, I may be transitioning this business. The person I'm going to look to lead the business will have spent some time in sales, or will have also managed a project, or will have worked in the accounting side of things, or at least be able to understand and interpret the financials. But to give people the opportunity to say, you're going to get an array of experiences, which actually, as the business owner building a company, you get all that thrown on you anyhow, right?
Hmm.
You just deal
Hmm.
with it as you go. But I see a lot of companies where someone's been on one side of the business and they're totally dependent on somebody else, or have not anywhere near the knowledge they should
Yeah.
as to other sides of the business. But I think that also says, if I lay out some things for you that you should be thinking about doing, or you should be doing in terms of training or reading or developing or whatever to be ready for that, whether or not you do those things, to me, is a good indication of how serious you are about that opportunity.
Or how successful they will be. So I think you and I both seen in our remodeling world where somebody might be in production and all of a sudden is given the responsibility of sales when they have no skills in sales and they really can't do it, but they would be accountable for sales if they were the business owner.
Yeah.
So they pretty much then say, well, I don't like this. This is not what I want to do. So they bow out automatically. And I think that can happen with almost any role because people are going to go where they're comfortable. They're going to want to do the role that they're comfortable in.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think, a big part of also that development is seeing who takes the initiative, right?
Mm-hmm.
When someone says,
Yeah.
hey, you laid out for me what I should do, like I'm ready, I'm on top. Those to me are good indications that that's going to be somebody that will take the initiative with the company as well. If
Right.
you're pulling
Right.
someone along, kicking and screaming to get done the
Mhm.
things you're asking them to do, and then you put them in the leadership role,
Yeah. That's
they
never going to
change
work.
dramatically or they struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've seen in the remodeling world where some of our peers, my peers, were interested in putting somebody in a role, but they were always having to push and pull to get them there. And it was never going to work that way.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So I think in thinking about it, I'd like people to focus on the fact that, they certainly, you don't want to overcommit, right? You don't want to give people the indication that, you know, they're going to get a shot at something if there are things they need to do ahead of time to get ready for that. I think people got to be really careful about trying to piece together a team. I think that's got to come a little bit more organically from the team.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I think every organization needs someone taking the lead, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're partners or spouses or a leadership team or siblings or whatever, someone's got to be able to make those decisions
Mm-hmm.
and set the direction, don't you think?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for your input this week. Selling the dream. We hope the people that are out there now looking at their leadership team with questionable eyes and their children with, concerns, just take a step back and realize that the best thing you can do for somebody is set them up for success. And so some of these things about strengthening the company and really going through these processes are the things that are really going to help them if they do get the opportunity to step in and take on the business. So, Kathi, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll be back again sometime soon, probably in another week, with Selling the Dream, our podcast for people that want to transition or sell or, have a future for their business when they're done with it. So thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Selling the Dream podcast, starring Doug Howard and Kathi Fleck. Both Doug and Kathi have built and sold successful businesses and hope this podcast will help other small business owners do the same. Tune in every week to hear more tips for increasing the value of your company so you get the highest return for your years of hard work when it comes time to sell or transition your business. Can't wait till next week? Check out our website for more information at www.growththemes.com.